Every Christmas, it was their tradition, just the two of them, Grandpa and Elena. They'd put up the tree together, slowly unwrapping ornaments from boxes labeled in his late wife's handwriting. Elena would giggle while placing the crooked angel on top, just like she had since she was 5. They'd sip cocoa from mismatched mugs, one of them always too hot, and open a single small gift each on Christmas Eve. It wasn't about the cost. It was the comfort, the memories. This year, Grandpa felt something inside him shift. Maybe it was age. Maybe it was a desire to leave behind one last unforgettable memory. So he made a decision, one he hadn't told anyone yet. A gift not just for Elena, but for the entire family. A grand, 2-week luxury Christmas tour across Europe. Paris to Rome, Amsterdam to Vienna. He called his travel agent of 20 years. Booked first-class flights, private chefs, 5-star stays, snow cabins, castle tours, all tailored with love. Price tag, just over $500,000. But he didn't flinch. He thought, if it brings the family closer again, it's worth every penny. He covered everything. Flights, hotels, even designer shopping vouchers. Not just for Elena, but for her husband, her in-laws, her cousins, everyone. Because to Grandpa, love wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in shared laughter, in the way Elena's eyes lit up seeing the Eiffel Tower, in how family would gather around one table in Salzburg, raising hot cider under fairy lights. He even asked his tailor to prepare a warm wool coat for him. Dark gray, a little snug, but elegant. He imagined Elena teasing him about how dashing he looked. He imagined holding her hand on Christmas Eve in Rome, where they'd dine by candlelight overlooking the Tiber. That night, he wrapped the itinerary in a gold envelope and placed it beneath the tree. A secret gift. A grand surprise. The biggest Christmas he'd ever planned, because Elena always said he made holidays magical. And this year, he wanted to outdo himself. In the weeks leading up to the holiday trip, something began to feel off. At first, it was small things. A missed call here, a late reply there. Elena used to call him every evening, sometimes just to talk about her day, sometimes just to ask if he needed anything. But now, days would go by without a word. When Grandpa texted, the responses were brief. Sometimes a thumbs up, sometimes nothing at all. He tried not to overthink it. Maybe she was just busy. After all, she had a wedding coming up, a new job, new responsibilities. She had every reason to be distracted. When he called, she'd answer with cheerful exhaustion. Grandpa, I'm swamped. But I promise we'll talk soon. Just a few more things to sort out. But soon, even those calls became rare. She canceled their Sunday coffee without rescheduling. Twice. Said something about back-to-back meetings and needing a weekend to just breathe. Grandpa smiled, told her to take care, and reminded her gently, don't forget to rest. But he could feel the distance growing, like a slow fog between them. He wondered if he had said something wrong. Or perhaps she was just growing up, moving on, the way young people do. Then came the group photos. On social media, Elena was all smiles, out with her husband's family, attending holiday markets, making plans. Grandpa wasn't tagged in any of the posts, nor mentioned in any captions. There was no sign of the big family trip, no hint of the gift he had spent months planning. And when he asked her casually, how are the preparations coming along for the trip? She hesitated before replying, oh yeah, we'll figure it all out soon. It was like she'd forgotten the spark they used to share, the way she'd squeeze his hand every Christmas Eve and whisper, you always make it special, Grandpa. He told himself not to read too much into it. Maybe the silence was temporary. Maybe the warmth would return. After all, Christmas had always brought them back together. But deep down, he felt it. Something had shifted. And this time, it wasn't just distance. It was detachment. It happened by accident, the kind of moment that feels small at first, but leaves a permanent mark. One evening, Grandpa's niece, Cassie, came by to drop off some cookies and help him set up a new streaming device. She was always kind, always cheerful, tapping away on her phone between bites of sugar-dusted shortbread. As she bent over the TV, her phone buzzed on the table, a flurry of notifications lighting up the screen. At first, Grandpa wasn't paying attention. But then, one preview caught his eye. LOL, imagine him in Paris. He'd probably fall asleep before dinner. Then another, he's just funding it. We don't need him to come. And another, he still thinks this is his idea. Let him believe it. The group chat was titled, Christmas Eurofam 2025 Christmas Tree Airplane Hash. He wasn't in it. Cassie had forgotten to mute her notifications, and with every new message, a truth unraveled. Grandpa didn't want to pry, but the word kept flashing like blinking lights on a cold winter night. It was Elena leading the conversation. She was assigning hotel room pairings, meal plans, excursions. There were jokes about keeping Grandpa away from the spa so he doesn't ruin the aesthetic. Someone even shared a meme of a tired old man with the caption, "Vibes if he tags along." Grandpa's heart sank, not from the mockery, but from the realization that they had already decided. He wasn't invited. He wasn't included. He was just useful. Useful for his wallet. He excused himself to the kitchen under the pretense of checking the oven, but stood silently by the sink, his hands trembling. The trip he had planned, down to the scenic train rides and candlelit dinners, had been hijacked, twisted into a private family affair, with him as the invisible benefactor. He stared out at the snow-covered yard and remembered Elena at age 9, insisting she'd never leave him behind, even on her honeymoon. Now, she couldn't even add him to a group chat. Cassie never noticed. She laughed at a message, then tucked her phone away like nothing had happened. But Grandpa had seen enough, and in that moment, something inside him went quiet. Not angry, not bitter, just quiet. Later that week, Grandpa picked up the phone. His fingers hovered for a moment above Elena's name in his contacts, then he tapped it. The call rang longer than usual before she picked up. "Hey, Grandpa." Her voice was bright, a little too bright. He smiled gently. "Hi, sweetheart. I just wanted to check in about the trip. I realized I never got the final flight details. I was still departing from JFK. Or did it change?" There was a pause, then a quick shuffle, like she had covered the phone with her hand. When she returned, her voice had lost a bit of its sparkle. "Oh, right, the flights." He waited. "Well," she dragged the word out, "we thought. I talked to Mom and Jason, and we just figured maybe this year, you'd prefer a quiet Christmas at home. You know, to relax. The travel might be a little intense." Grandpa said nothing, just listened. She rushed ahead. "But don't worry. We'll take lots of photos. I'll send you a postcard from each stop. Promise." He remained silent. Elena laughed nervously, the way people do when they know they've already crossed a line. "You understand, right? Don't be upset. We just thought it might be better this way. You wouldn't enjoy the long walks and late nights. It's just logistics." He nodded to himself, though she couldn't see. "I see. She added, "It's not like you're missing everything. We'll FaceTime. You'll feel like you're there with us." He didn't respond to that either. And finally, when she realized he wasn't going to argue, wasn't going to plead or guilt her, she softened. "I love you, Grandpa. You know that." He smiled faintly. "I know." They hung up. He sat there for a while, holding the phone in his lap. The silence in the room felt heavier than usual, not because of the words said, but because of what they confirmed. She had made the decision long before the call. She'd planned it all, without him. And for the first time in years, Grandpa looked over at the Christmas tree box still sealed in the hallway, and didn't feel like opening it. After the call, Grandpa sat in stillness. He placed the phone gently on the side table, not with anger, not with frustration, but with the kind of tired understanding that only years of life could teach. The fire in the hearth had dimmed to glowing embers. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. Inside, everything was still. The Christmas decorations were still in the attic. The garland, the handmade ornaments from Elena's childhood, the music box that played Silent Night when wound. Normally, by this time each year, the house would be glowing, wreaths on every door, candles in every window, cinnamon in the air. But now, the only thing that flickered was the reflection of the flames in his quiet eyes. He leaned back in his chair and looked around the room, the photo frames, the old clock, the empty couch across from him. Memories everywhere. He remembered Elena's first steps on that rug. Her school dance photo taken right near the kitchen. The time he stayed up all night sewing her costume because she'd forgotten to tell him it was due the next day. Birthdays he never missed. Graduations he never sat out. He helped her with college tuition, quietly. Paid her rent for the first year after she got married, anonymously, through her landlord. When her husband lost his job, it was Grandpa who stepped in to cover groceries, acting like it was just a little gift. Not once did he ask for anything back. And now, she had thanked him by leaving him behind. Not just forgotten, removed, excluded from a celebration he had planned. A memory he had hoped to share. His mind drifted to the gold envelope still hidden in his drawer. The one that held the printed itinerary. He had imagined her eyes lighting up when she opened it on Christmas Eve. But now, she wouldn't even know it existed. Grandpa didn't cry. He didn't call anyone. He didn't rage. He simply stayed at the fire, watching it rise and fall. The quiet rhythm of warmth in a house that once rang with laughter. A storm was coming. But in that moment, there was only silence. And sometimes, silence says more than words ever could. What Elena and the rest of the family didn't know, what they never even thought to ask, was that Grandpa had done everything the old-fashioned way. Every flight, every five-star hotel, every luxury upgrade had been booked through his longtime travel agent, Ms. Harriet Collins, a sharp, no-nonsense woman he had known since the days when paper tickets were still mailed out. From the very beginning, he'd used his personal travel account. All bookings had been made under his name. No shared access, no delegated control. He had paid the deposits himself, coordinated every detail through one-on-one calls with Harriet, and had the entire itinerary saved and secured through his email and hers. He remembered when Elena's husband had casually offered to help manage the trip logistics months ago. Grandpa had simply smiled and replied, "Don't worry. I've got it covered." And he did, meticulously. Even the private car service in Rome, the snow villa in Switzerland, the gourmet dinner reservations in Vienna, all of it linked to his account. He hadn't shared login credentials, hadn't transferred ownership of the bookings. There was no backup contact, no co-planner. No one else had the authority to make changes or even to confirm them. They had assumed, foolishly, that because Grandpa had paid, he was finished. Just a wallet with a kind face. That once the money left his account, the control did too. But they were wrong. Grandpa stood up slowly and walked to the drawer in his study. He pulled out the slim folder where he'd printed everything. Flights, hotel confirmations, booking codes. All of it, with his name clearly listed as the primary guest. He smiled, just slightly, not out of revenge, but out of clarity. The power wasn't in punishing them. The power was in realizing that he still held the reins. They had made plans without him, but he was the one holding the foundation. And when a house is built on someone else's bricks, it only takes one missing piece to bring it all down. At exactly 6:45 a.m. on Christmas morning, the house was quiet. No music, no laughter, no smell of cinnamon rolls baking in the oven. Just Grandpa at his desk, bathed in soft golden light from the lamp beside him, hands steady on the keyboard. He opened his email and clicked on the draft he had written the night before. It was short, precise, and polite, the kind of message Harriet Collins, his travel agent, had always appreciated. Subject: Update to bookings. Message: Good morning, Harriet. Please proceed with full cancellation of the Europe itinerary booked under my account. I understand the policy and request that all refunds be processed to the original payment method. Wishing you and your team a peaceful holiday. Raymond. He read it once more, not out of hesitation, but out of ritual. Then he pressed send. It was done. 10 minutes later, at 6:55 a.m., his inbox chimed. Dear Mr. Raymond, your request has been processed. All hotel, flight, and service reservations under your account have been successfully canceled. Refunds are being issued per the terms. Wishing you a warm and restful Christmas. He closed the laptop gently and poured himself a cup of coffee. No sugar today. Just strong, dark, and honest. Then, at precisely 7 a.m., his phone began to light up. It started with one ring, then two, then three, rapid fire. Elena, Jason, Cassie, Elena again, then her mother. Then someone he hadn't heard from in years. The screen filled with call after call. Texts flooded in. Some were panicked. Some were angry. Some just said, "Call me now." "What did you do?" "Everything's gone. We're standing here and nothing is working." But Grandpa didn't answer. He set the phone face down on the table. The ringing continued, muffled by the wood. He sat back in his chair, coffee in hand, and watched the snow begin to fall gently outside the window. He hadn't ruined Christmas. He'd simply taken back the one they had tried to steal from him, and the silence in his living room had never felt more peaceful. The airport buzzed with holiday travelers, a blur of rolling suitcases, sparkling decorations, and cheerful announcements echoing through the terminal. Elena stood near the check-in counter in a designer coat, sunglasses perched on her head, her in-laws beside her, all dressed for elegance. Jason wheeled a set of monogrammed luggage. They were headed to Paris, the first stop on what was supposed to be the most luxurious Christmas of their lives. Elena stepped forward, confidently handing over their passports and confirmation printouts. But the airline staffer's polite smile faltered. She tapped her keyboard, frowned, typed again, then looked up. "I'm sorry. These bookings were canceled by the account holder early this morning." "What?" Elena blinked. Jason leaned over. "There must be a mistake. This is a prepaid itinerary, first-class seats, priority boarding, lounge access. Check again." The agent nodded, still professional. "I've checked 3 times, sir. These were premium bookings, but the original account holder requested full cancellation. All linked services were revoked. I'm afraid there's nothing in the system under your names now." Behind them, Jason's parents were already murmuring in disbelief. Elena's mother-in-law pulled out her phone, trying to log into the app. "It's all blank," she whispered. Elena's voice grew sharper. "Call your manager. This is impossible." "My grandfather," she caught herself. "I mean, someone must have made a mistake." A supervisor arrived. "Calm. Firm. I can confirm. The flights, hotel transfers, chauffeur pickups, everything were linked to one central booking account. That account was closed this morning. We've sent confirmation to the client." At that moment, Jason's phone buzzed. He opened a text from his bank app. "Card declined. Please check authorization settings." He tried to swipe the airport lounge access QR code. Access revoked. All eyes turned to Elena. The upgraded suites. Gone. The candlelight dinner by the Eiffel Tower. Gone. The chauffeured Mercedes van waiting outside. Not waiting anymore. It wasn't just a logistical error. It was a clean wipe, a complete erasure of every luxury they had quietly assumed belonged to them. And at the center of it all was the one man they had written out of the picture. Now, they stood in line, overdressed and overconfident, with nowhere to go. By the time Elena got home from the airport, she was fuming, not just embarrassed, but humiliated. The luxurious Christmas trip she'd flaunted for months had vanished in an instant, and she knew people would start asking questions. So she did what she always did when things went wrong. She went online. She posted a carefully crafted photo of her suitcase beside a fireplace, captioned, "We were ready for a magical Christmas until someone betrayed us." Some wounds cut deeper when they come from family. Within minutes, likes rolled in. Supportive comments, heart emojis, the usual echo chamber of sympathy. She hinted that her grandfather had changed unexpectedly, that he had backed out last minute after promising everything. Her loyal followers rallied behind her, at first. But the internet doesn't stay one-sided for long. That same night, screenshots began surfacing. From the group chat, from cousins, from former friends who had seen the private conversations. Messages where Elena called her grandfather just the bank, where she laughed about keeping him off the trip for the aesthetic, where someone even joked, "Let him fund it and fade into the background." One particularly damning screenshot showed Elena writing, "He won't even know. He's old. We'll tell him plans changed." The tide turned instantly. Comments flooded her page. "This is the man who paid for your wedding. You used your own grandfather like a credit card. If my grandpa did that much for me, I'd carry him through Europe myself." People unfollowed her in waves. Influencer blogs picked up the story. One even ran a headline, Influencer cancels grandpa, gets cancelled by karma. Brand deal she had quietly negotiated, holiday skincare campaigns, luggage promotions, luxury travel features, started pulling out. Her inbox filled with polite messages stating due to recent developments, we're suspending this collaboration. Even a major corporate sponsor she had secured for the new year backed out with a brief, brutal line. We no longer feel this partnership reflects our brand values. Elena sat on her bed, staring at her phone, watching it all unravel, not because her grandfather had said anything, but because the truth had spoken for him, and the world listened. Christmas morning unfolded slowly, like the falling snow outside Grandpa's window. Quiet, soft, deliberate. He sat in his favorite chair, wrapped in a thick knitted sweater, hands wrapped around a warm mug of spiced tea. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was gentle, honest. The house wasn't filled with laughter or footsteps or torn wrapping paper this year. The decorations remained in the attic. The tree was never brought down. And yet, the stillness felt comforting, like the first deep breath after weeks of holding it all in. Around mid-morning, there was a knock at the door. It was Mrs. Talbot from next door, holding a pecan pie and wrapped in a red scarf. "Thought you might enjoy this," she said with a warm smile. "It's just me and the cat this year, too." They laughed softly together, and he promised to stop by for tea later in the week. A little later, two of his old friends from the chess club dropped by. No invitations, no expectations, just a quiet, friendly visit. They brought a flask of cider, a tin of cookies, and stories from the past. For an hour or so, the living room filled with gentle chuckles, familiar jokes, and shared memories. And when they left, Grandpa returned to his chair, refilled his mug, and watched the snow fall again, blanketing everything in white. The phone still buzzed occasionally on the kitchen counter, but he didn't check it. He didn't need to. For once, no one was asking him for money. No one needed a favor. No one was pretending to love him because they wanted something. He was alone, but not lonely. Because this Christmas, for the first time in a long time, he had chosen peace over performance, silence over obligation. And in doing so, he had given himself the one gift no one else ever thought to offer him. A Christmas that was entirely his own. It was 3 days after Christmas when the doorbell rang. Grandpa was in the kitchen, watering the small potted plant that sat by the window. The snow had melted slightly, the roads clearer now, though the air still held that wintry chill. He wasn't expecting anyone. When he opened the door, Elena stood there. No designer coat, no sunglasses, just a gray hoodie, her hair pulled back, and eyes red from crying. She clutched something in her hand, maybe a scarf, maybe a tissue, and her lips quivered as she tried to speak. "Grandpa," she whispered. He didn't say a word, just opened the door a little wider and stepped aside. She walked in, slowly, like someone stepping into a memory she wasn't sure she still belonged to. She stood in the center of the living room and looked around. No tree, no decorations, no signs of the usual warmth she had taken for granted. And then, she broke. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she dropped to the couch, hands covering her face. "We messed up. I messed up. I never thought you'd actually cancel it. I just thought you'd still want us to go, that you'd let it go." Grandpa remained standing, calm, steady. He looked at her, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with something far more unsettling. Distance. "Elena," he said gently, "Christmas was never about the trip." She looked up, eyes wide and wet. "It was about who remembered to sit beside me." She opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came out. What could she say? That she was sorry? That she didn't mean to leave him out? The words felt hollow now. Too late, too light to carry the weight of what she'd done. He walked over, poured her a glass of water, and handed it to her without a word. Then he sat in his chair, facing the window again. They stayed like that for a while. Two people, one broken bond, and the heavy silence between them, thick with lessons no words could fully fix. Weeks passed. The snow began to thaw, and with it, the weight in Grandpa's heart slowly began to settle into something firmer. Not sadness, not anger, but resolution. He didn't stop loving Elena. That was the hardest part. Love doesn't vanish just because trust breaks. But love also doesn't mean turning a blind eye forever. Not when the lesson had been so clear. Not when silence had spoken louder than all the years of sacrifice. One quiet afternoon, he took a walk to the attorney's office. No announcement, no drama, just a man with a folder in his hand, ready to rewrite the future on his own terms. Inside the office, he reviewed the papers again. The inheritance he had once carefully outlined for Elena, the properties, the savings, the trust fund meant for her children. He adjusted it all, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. Instead, he redirected those funds into something new. A scholarship, one that would carry his late wife's name, the Margaret Bennett Fund for Compassionate Scholars. It would support students who showed extraordinary acts of kindness. Young people who took care of aging relatives, who volunteered without applause, who understood the true meaning of family, not just by blood, but by how they treated the people who raised them. He imagined Margaret smiling, her eyes twinkling behind those soft glasses she wore when she graded papers at the dining table. She always believed in second chances, but never in rewarding entitlement. As the lawyer slid the final document across the table for signing, Grandpa paused for a moment, not out of doubt, but out of reflection. Then he signed his name with a calm hand. The legacy had shifted, not in anger, but in purpose. That night, as he sat by the fireplace once again, sipping tea and watching the snow melt outside, he let his thoughts drift, not to what had been taken from him, but to what he had chosen to protect. And in the soft voice of his heart, he whispered the final truth of this journey. Sometimes, the greatest gift isn't what you give. It's what you refuse to give to those who forgot your worth. The fire crackled gently, and the chapter closed, not with vengeance, but with grace.